live. I'm gonna get off. Enjoy. And I'm
Are you
gonna.
doing the Facebook thing?
Yep. Hang on 1 second. All right, bud. See you later.
Thank you, Ryan. Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday, October 29th. Give everybody a couple minutes to jump on.
And you're live on Facebook. Someone asked you how you're feeling, Mark.
How am I feeling? I'm not talking about my feelings today. I think I need to create a new mood meter to talk about how I'm feeling today. It's one of those days, everybody. It happens. Kennesaw, Georgia, welcome. Oh, cool. Nice to see everybody from everywhere. Laguna Woods, that sounds nice. In Minneapolis, Chicago, Vermont.
Buenos Aires.
Maybe. Buenos Aires, wow. That's cool. Cool. Jersey Shore. Hello, Orange, Connecticut, right next door. Say hi to Wendy for me. I miss Wendy. Hey, Melbourne. Welcome back to reality. I just heard that you opened up. All of you are now allowed to go out of your homes after 7 months.
And Facebook, you have Utah, PA, New York.
Great. All right, so a couple things, none of which I can remember. Just kidding. Today we are jumping into expressing emotion. We're going a lot slower than I anticipated, just so you know. So I hope you are okay with this book club lasting for the rest of your life, because I think it might take that long through the whole book. Everybody's like, woo! I mean, what else are we gonna do during COVID crisis other than like connect on Thursday nights to talk about our feelings, right? What else is there to do? You can watch TV, but like, it's not gonna help you get enlightened. Until right through, yeah. Next Thursday is gonna be an interesting book club. By the way, I'm saving emotion regulation for next Thursday, because well, I'm not gonna say anything, but I probably just said too much. We'll be talking about emotion regulation next Thursday. I hope all of you are doing the surveys. I mean, it's been really cool to see you do that. If you haven't done the survey yet, do it tonight or by tomorrow. Ryan puts the link in the invitation. And so literally, for some of you, you've been taking this survey. It's the 5th week already, which I think is pretty freaking cool. And you're gonna be able to like literally track yourself over time. So make sure you do that. All right, let's get into the business. By the way, after tonight, if this book club is not enough for you, from 8 till 9 tonight, I'm doing this thing that I've never done before, and I'm not even sure how it's gonna work, but a film company called KPJR Films has invited me to do this live Twitter interaction experience about my book. And so, very generous. And so if you are like, gosh, I can't get enough of this, and you are bored from 8 to 9 p.m. tonight, and you wanna answer questions or participate, it's gonna be on Twitter. And you can just go onto my Twitter to find out all about it. Okay, here we go. So let's put ourselves into perspective. Like, where have we been? Where are we? And then next week, you know where we're going. So let's think about this. We started off the book club by getting ourselves kind of situated in the concept of permission to feel. And we talked about, do we give ourselves the permission to feel the full range of emotions? Do we give the people we love and the people we work with and the people we hang out with the permission to be their true, full feeling selves? And then we talked about this idea of emotions matter for all these reasons: attention and memory and learning and decision making and relationships and health. And then we went into the concept of the emotion scientist versus the emotion judge. The idea of being open and curious as opposed to critical and closed. And then we started talking about the R and the U and the L. And then we had our guest, Matt, and then James last week, who we talked about perception of emotion and the challenges with perceiving emotion. And then we talked about understanding emotion. And all of you, or many of you, took the assessments on reading emotions in face and voice and understanding emotions. You did that task where you had to come up with synonyms for words. You did the task where you had to do the matching the appraisal to the feeling. And then you did the task with the card sorting. And now we're at expressing emotions. We haven't built that test yet, so there's nothing for you to take yet. But the goal of tonight, I think, is going to be to do a little bit of reflection. I don't know about you. I don't know anything about you, but I have done more talking this week, and I have this Twitter experience from 8 to 9, which I'm excited about. Yes, it's from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time, like right after this is over, in between my vodka and that. Just kidding. 8 to 9 is that, and then I got to talk tonight from 10 to 11:30, and then I'll be slightly psychotic and driving myself to the institution to check myself in. But I only share that with you because I think it's interesting, to talk about the expression of emotion. And when we talk about permission to feel, it's more complex than just the permission to be your true, full feeling self. It's also about the permission to express your emotions. And are you in environments where you can be your true, full feeling self? And what happens when there's a discrepancy between what's going on for you on the inside and what you have to show on the outside? So that's our theme tonight. And Ryan, you need to give me access to my slides. Thank you very much. Permission to share.
You should have it now.
Thank you, sir. So as always, if you have an insight from our book club, get it out there to the world. Maybe you can all do I have permission to express what? What do you feel like you need? What emotions do you feel like you need to express right now? I share with you mine. I think my permission to express is, I'm just going to be honest and say I'm completely overwhelmed. But if you work with me, then you know that's the status of my everyday existence. All right, expressing emotions. Maybe you can do a little tweet. I want permission to feel blank. Sorrow, anger, disappointment, hopelessness and anger, frustration, worry, fear, anxiety. Yeah. And hope. Somebody actually asked a question that I think is an important one to just start with. Can you be in more than one quadrant at a time? And the answer is yes. As a matter of fact, I have this very strong memory of being in a school that served children who have learning differences and special needs. And this teacher was not yet familiar with ruler, but she was just starting it. And what was interesting is that she said, I'm really, I know you're coming to my class to do some videotaping, and my kids, it wasn't the best mindset, let's put it that way. Anyhow, this boy comes in to the classroom and I said, so where are you on the mood meter? And he goes, I'm everywhere. And I'm like, okay, sure. And the teacher looked at me and she kind of rolled her eyes, which obviously was kind of not cool. And the boy went on to say that he was in the yellow because he was super excited that I was there and he was going to get to meet me and talk about, his feelings, and he was going to be videotaped. But then he said, in the morning when he got up, he was feeling calm. And then he remembered he was being interviewed and he got excited. And then he missed the bus and he got angry. And then he got yelled at by his mother and he felt bad. And he's like, so I'm all over the mood meter. And I was like, wow, you're like really emotionally intelligent. And so the truth is, you can be in all four quadrants at the same time, right? Think about it. You're learning something new, like emotional intelligence. You're excited to apply it. But at the same time, you're nervous about like how people are going to respond to you being your true, full feeling self. Can anyone imagine, like, if everyone here right now was open and honest and authentic with about how you truly felt, that maybe it would be met with some resistance or skepticism or resistance? Anyone? Could you imagine we just like all just said, I'm just going to be my true, full feeling self tonight. I'm going to tell you who I really am or how I really feel. we'd all be single and in the bar, in New York City that's closed down. All right. As you can see, this is going to be a crapshoot what happens tonight in this book club. So, expressing emotions, knowing how and when to express emotions with different people across contexts. Think about that. We express our emotions in different ways with different people. We express our emotions in different ways across contexts. And then, whether or not we express and how we express our emotions varies as a function of our personality. Introversion, extroversion is just one example. Gender, not because the genders express emotions differently, but there are implicit rules in society, at home, and in workplaces about the expression of emotion. Power. People of greater power have greater permission. I can't tell you how many stories that I have been in, how many stories I have not have been in. I've been in probably a lot of stories, but how many presentations I've given in, for example, in the corporate sector, where people say things like, well, I'm the big boss. I can express whatever the heck I want. And then I interview people who work, lower on the totem pole, and they're like, can't be my true self here. I'll get fired immediately. Social norms, homes, schools, families, different rules, race. We've talked a little bit about race so far. We're going to talk more about it when we get into the application of this work in schools and in workplaces. But expressing emotions is directly linked to race in pretty sad ways. And so don't remember that. Well, I was actually having a meeting this morning with a friend of mine named Mike, who's a professor here at Yale. He's a Black guy. And he and I are working on writing a piece together, around race and emotion. And, we were very open and honest with each other because we're friends. And the truth is that the rules are different for him than for me. If Mike, who's a big Black guy, and I'm a little white guy, are walking down the street and we're both expressing anger, we're treated differently. And I think, this is something that needs some serious addressing. A, because it's racism, and B, because there are implications when people who are feeling a certain way can't express their true emotions and they're forced to suppress their feelings. And so I think what that tells us is that these skills that we're talking about of emotional intelligence are baked into systems. And so if society, if a parent, if a boss doesn't permit you to have those feelings or express those feelings rather, then what do you do with them? There are ethnic rules around expressing, not that they're good or bad, that they're just rules around religion and race and ethnicity, around hugging, around eye contact. Same with culture. You know, I always say, like when I do presentations, for example, in Myanmar, Singapore, Korea, for example, my martial art is from Korea. People say, Mark-san, and they bow. It's pretty nice. We bow to each other. When I give a talk, you know, on Wall Street, nobody's bowing, right? I get this handshake, you know, that's like so strong that I feel like I'm like gonna lose my hand because everybody's trying to, you know, express their testosterone. So my point here is that this is not a simple concept. Expressing emotion is complex. Does this resonate with you? The nuances in expressing emotion? Does it resonate you that we're kind of constantly discerning? Is it safe? Am I comfortable to be my true, full, expressive self? And so tonight, what I wanted to do was do a little bit of reflecting. I want everyone to get comfortable in their seats. Please. Let's stretch out our necks a little bit. We're going to do 2 reflections. This one requires some reflection. Let's all just take a nice long inhale. If I fall asleep, Ryan, please continue. Take a nice long inhale and a nice long exhale. Okay. Where are you living emotionally right now? I'm going to ask you to pretend that today, yesterday, is a typical day in your life over the last couple of months. You wake up. Everyone stop typing right now. This is time to reflect. You wake up, your eyes open. How are you feeling? You're getting ready in the morning. Maybe you're brushing your teeth. Hopefully you're brushing your teeth. How are you feeling? You have kids, you have no kids, you're in a relationship. You're in a relationship that you don't want to be in a relationship with. You're alone. You got pets, you got kids. How are you feeling? It's breakfast. What are you eating? How's your coffee? How are you feeling? It's COVID time. Are you leaving to go to work or are you staying home? Are you getting kids ready to go to school that's sitting next to you at the dining room table? Or are you commuting? How are you feeling? Meeting 1, meeting 2, Zoom meeting 3, Zoom meeting 7. It's only 10 o'clock. How are you feeling? It's lunchtime. What are you eating? Are you having a healthy lunch or an unhealthy lunch? Are you skipping lunch? How are you feeling? Meeting 7, meeting 8, jumping to check the kids, no kids, walking the dog, not walking the dog, wishing you didn't have to walk the dog. How are you feeling? It's the late afternoon. What does your afternoon look like, sound like, feel like? It's getting dark. It's the evening. How are you feeling? It's dinner time. You cooking? You're doing Grubhub or one of the other sites? What are you having for dinner typically? How are you feeling? It's the evening. Television, no television. Thursday's book club. How are you feeling? It's the evening. Reading, no reading. Reflecting, no reflecting. Having your second glass of wine, contemplating your third. Going through a whole thing of why you really deserve that third glass of wine, but you really shouldn't. And then, que sera, sera. And then it's time to go to bed. you put your head on the pillow. How are you feeling? So I'd like all of you to just take a moment and just think about what's going on for you on the inside. That's the R and the U and the L. Where are you? How are you feeling? What percentage are you in the yellow, red, blue, and green? So I would tell you right now, for me, I would say that internally, I'm in the yellow, I would say just about 10%. Green, I'm gonna say 30%. A little bit of blue lately, unfortunately. Too much blue for me. I'm gonna say 30%. 30, 67. I'm gonna give myself another 30% in the red. I might give myself 40 in the red and 20 in the blue. Been pretty overwhelmed. So that's the internal self. That's the self that you have to be aware of. And now what we're going to do is bring this to expression, which is we're going to do a different reflection now. And this is a harder one, so you've got to really pay attention. Let's get a little stretching, a little breathing, a little shoulder shrugging. So instead of thinking about your internal self and your psychological self, now what I want to ask you to do is take this outside of yourself. I'm going to ask you to become a cinematographer. My partner is a cinematographer. I know what it's like to be in front of the camera or to watch someone behind the camera staring at you. And so what I'm going to ask you to do now is, instead of going through that reflection that I did earlier in terms of what you're feeling, I want you to think about what you are expressing. So take yourself through your typical day. What is your vocal tone like throughout the day? How about your facial expression? How about your body language? For me, I feel like my whole life right now is what we call emotional labor, right? I'm doing a lot of presentations online, and I've got to be like, hi, everybody. Well, I'm not quite like that because that's really freaking weird. But you get what I'm talking about. Like, I got to be on. And I'm like, inside, I'm thinking about, oh my goodness, I got to do another presentation. I can't take it. What am I doing with my life? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Like, you have all these feelings on the inside, and then you got to like show up for the world. Anyone going through that like I am? Like, for your children, for your colleagues? And so my question to you is, how's that going for you? How is that is it consistent? If you're in the yellow 50% of the time, are you showing the yellow? Or are you masking your red and blue and trying to show up yellow and green? How many of you feel like there is a discrepancy between your inner life and your outward expression? 100%? A lot of masking? Right. Imagine if you're a kindergarten teacher. I have such empathy for our kindergarten teachers, because they have, like, you think about it, they're in Zoom with these 25 kids, it's ridiculous, or they're in class and like, good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be working. Today's going to be a great day. And internal, it's like, what am I doing with my life? Can anyone relate? Oh, gosh, it's hard. So the reason why this skill is the precursor to regulation is because we have to manage that discrepancy. And that's a discrepancy is what we call emotional labor. So I'm going to ask all of you right now, in your role, What emotions do you believe? What emotions do you believe you are required to express? Calm and happy, happy, calm, enthusiasm, excited, content, relaxed, confident, compassion, patience, contentment. Yeah. So we have, think about the control that we have to have in our faces. I mean, literally, we have to monitor our facial expressions. We have to create a vocal tone that may not be the one that coincides with our true feelings. We've got to have our eyes a certain way. We've got to use our bodies a certain way. And the reason why it's called emotional labor is because it's actual labor and it takes a toll on our health and wellness. Does this resonate with people? Like, how many of you have a hard time like shutting off the faked facial expression, body language at the end of the day? It can be really hard. If you can shut off really fast, you might be lucky or good. I find it, I find it hard. So what do we know from the science? What we know is that there's burnout. There's decreased satisfaction with school and jobs and work if you're a teacher. Mental health problems, including anxiety and depression. And so this is why we have to find ways to express our emotions. A well-known researcher named James Pennebaker has done endless research on this. And by the way, it's not necessarily about like writing out your feelings. It's taking some time to just journal, just to free write about your experiences. Decreases in physician visits, better immune function, lower blood pressure, improvements in mood, reductions in stress. Unemployed get jobs more quickly, less absenteeism at work. So let's take a nice long inhale. Let's stop sharing today. And a nice long exhale. And I thought, for tonight, for our, last 10 minutes or so, I've been not giving you a tremendous amount of opportunity to ask questions about anything you've learned thus far, or anything about the science of emotion, the skills of emotional intelligence. So I'd like everyone to just take a minute, take a nice long inhale, and a nice long exhale. And just, what's on your mind? What are you curious about? So help with emotional labor. Conflict resolution. Shame is going on the mood meter. The new mood meter is going to be coming out in about 3 weeks. It's going to blow your mind. Safe spaces. Authenticity. How to stop trying to make other people feel comfortable. Okay. So I think, staying consistent with the emotional expression and some of the questions that you're having. We'll get to the meta moment next week. There's no such thing as a positive or negative. We call it positive and negative emotions because that's what psychologists stupidly did decades ago. But we're going to wipe away the notion that there is such a thing as a positive or negative emotion. Emotions are experiences. The only thing that you want to think about with this idea of positive or negative or unpleasant or pleasant is that unpleasant or so-called negative emotions are information, but you want to evaluate as an emotion scientist the amount of time and the intensity. So your signals for needing support are going to come from those signals of duration and intensity. This is why using the mood meter is so important, because what that means, like I'm in the blue, I'm in the red. The question is how many days, how many weeks have you been in the blue regularly, and how intense has your blue been? How intense has your red been? And that's the information piece. Am I writing another book? I actually am going to write another book, but I'm not going to tell you what it's about. What it'll be is Permission to Feel 3.0. And so I hope that's clear for everyone. There's no such thing as a good or a bad emotion. All emotions are information. Negative emotions are only not helpful when they are long in duration and high in intensity. And why is that? Because that's when emotions start having deleterious effects on our physical and our mental health and our relationships and our well-being. And so the only criteria, which we'll talk about next week, for whether or not an emotion is unhelpful or helpful is your self-awareness around, is the emotion supporting you in having good health and making good decisions and building and maintaining healthy relationships and ensuring that you have good mental health and your everyday performance as a parent, as a teacher, in the workplace. So it's really, really important to think about it in that perspective. Does that help? Yes, no, maybe so. And so the idea for this, going back to emotional labor, is oh shit, I'm faking my freaking feelings 15 hours a day and I feel like shit. I don't know where I'm coming up with this stuff today, but you get my point. If you have that realization that you are emotionally, you're engaging that emotional labor for that long of a time, and then at the end of the day, you're wiped and you're unable to switch and you feel depleted and you're not being your best self for your loved ones or your dog or yourself, that's what this work is about. That's what emotional intelligence is. It's being the scientist and checking in with yourself. And then the question is, okay, what do I do with that feeling? Well, I'm reminded of a friend of mine who was a superintendent in New York City, and she would say, I mean, she was a morning person. She's like, I'm the morning and I'm the yellow. And then when she'd leave work every day around 6 p.m., she said, I'm such in the deep blue that a spatula, a crane couldn't lift me up. I just want to go home. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to get lost in a book, and then I don't want to go out for dinner. And then what she realized is what? What did she realize? What is that? She was tired, yes. She didn't have enough emotional balance, and that she was depleting her resources, right? Because a lot of this it's about resource depletion. The emotional labor is what we call a resource depletion experience. It depletes your inner resources when you have to compete with your inner feelings and your outward expression. And so the question is what are you doing with that information? And so what she decided to do was shut the door to her office certain days and just say, you know what, no meetings, nobody walks in. Another time she'd say, I'm making myself a cup of tea and I'm just gonna give myself some space to just do a few breathing exercises and chill out. But that's because she became an emotion scientist. She became the curious explorer, and she was using her mood meter plots throughout the day as information. And then she took that information and she started filling it and using strategies accordingly. Does this resonate with you? Next week, we're going to get into all the strategies, so don't you worry. We're going to spend a lot of time thinking about emotion regulation. So one of the tools that we have in Ruler is called the Emotional Intelligence Charter. And I want to spend a couple minutes talking about that. Yeah, you like hearing the dogs? Yeah, they're cute. They're doing well. Sadly, though, my one dog has to have an operation next week. Yeah, she has a hip problem. So, we're going to work on that. Okay. So the question was about what do you do with emotional labor? What does it mean to have a safe space? Can you be authentic? And so here's what I'd like to say. As I've said before, there are two questions about how you're feeling. The first is your actual feeling, right? How are you feeling right here, right now? Okay? That's your inner feeling, that's your experience. But there's something else that's really interesting. It's called ideal affect. Ideal affect. It's how you want to feel. And so for my school people who are my Ruler people, you know this really well because it's called the Emotional Intelligence Charter. And what you do is you ask that simple but profound question. How do you want to feel? And literally listen. And then for your home, which we'll talk about in the home chapter, and in a school, in a classroom, in an office. I just built one with a major Fortune 100 company. Took the C-suite and we had a rich conversation. How do you want to feel? Anyone want to guess what a bunch of executives in a Fortune 100 company want to feel? I'm going to tell you right now. Empowered, energized. All right. The words were inspired, connected, optimistic, valued, productive, challenged, centered. Think about that. We, the C-suite, the leadership team, want to feel centered, challenged, productive, valued, optimistic, connected, inspired. And so the question then goes to, well, what do we need to do in our organization so people feel that way as frequently as possible? Does that make sense? Can you do this with your family? Maybe over the holiday break, if you get a holiday break, whatever holiday you celebrate, can you just spend a dinner talking about, as a family, how do we want to feel? If you're a manager and have a team, can you spend a few minutes asking your team, how do you want to feel? Think about that. And then the next step is, okay, well, what does that look like? What are the things that we can do in order to have these feelings more frequently? If you really want to learn how to do this and you need the instructions, you can, it's in the book a little bit, but on my website, under my blogs from last year, you can find it. How do you build a family charter? Just go there and all the instructions are there. All right, everybody, let's just get settled in our seats. Let's take a nice long inhale and a nice long exhale. Permission to feel, permission to be your true, full feeling self, permission to express your feelings. Knowing that oftentimes we all have to engage in emotional labor. But sometimes you just can't, you have to laugh at your kid's joke even if it's not that funny sometimes, right? You can't always share how you're really feeling because, it can be offensive. But again, what's the trick with express? What are the two tricks that you have to analyze, especially for both the negative and the positive emotions? So for the interesting, think about this, for expressing, thank you, Sharon, you got it, duration, intensity. So if you're like in the yellow and it's like intense yellow all the time and it's never ending, you're gonna lose it at some point soon. If you're in the blue and the red for too long and it's too intense, it's going to impact your physical and mental health. Some people think, well, maybe the goal then is to become the Zen master and to be in the green all the time. I've gone on meditation retreats, by the way. I love mindfulness work and meditation. We'll talk more about that as well. But how many of you could be with someone that's in the green? I mean, come on, Claudette, let's think about it. All the time. Imagine someone just saying, let's just take another breath in and out. You ever meet someone who talks that way? And you're like, I've always been fascinated by this, and I probably shouldn't say this on my webinar, but when people get overly affected by their work, when they're like the yoga teacher or the mindfulness teacher who does that, like, okay, everybody, we're gonna breathe in and out. I'm like, who taught you how to use, why can't you just teach us how to breathe like a normal person would teach us how to breathe? Anyway, again, you're catching me in a rare place tonight. So the real lesson here, think about it. Negative emotions, duration, intensity, monitor it, be the scientist. Is it working for you? Is it working against you? Yellow, same thing, too long. You're gonna drive everybody crazy. You're gonna be so hyper and all over the place. Green, can get really boring and a little bit feel like patronizing after a while. Like, come on, gotta show some variability. Come on, get a little angry, please, just a little angry. Okay. Nice long inhale. And a nice long exhale. So here is your homework. I'm a professor. Your homework is to monitor your emotional labor. Okay? Your homework is to check in at the end of each day and say, all right, what percentage of my day was I incongruent? What percentage of my day was I feeling this way, but having to express that way? And can you find out maybe what's behind it? Like, what is your need to mask your true feeling? What is your need to overly intensify another feeling? Can you become an emotion scientist around what's behind your expressing of emotion? And that's it for tonight. If you're want to stay tuned, I'll see you on Twitter in 15 minutes. And if not, next week, I'm just going to say, may we please, whoever that person is, have someone who leads our country who can teach us about why emotional intelligence really matters, and to make sure that we can have an education system, right, that takes this work seriously, so that maybe, just maybe, we can create that emotion revolution where everyone has the permission to feel. And on that note, see you next Thursday. Please vote, please be kind to yourself, and please monitor your emotion expression.
Hey, Mark,
Yeah.
for those interested, so should they just go directly to your Twitter?
They can go to my Twitter, or they can go to @KPJRFilms. That's where it's going to be. They're going to start it on @KPJRFilms.
KPJR Films.
@KPJRFilms. You just go to that. They're going to start the questions in around 10 minutes and should be fun. I don't know. And again, thank you everybody for coming tonight. I know it was a little bit like, I don't know, I'm not going to describe. That wasn't emotional labor. That was just being my true self. So we'll see if it works.
Thank you, sir. We all loved it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Bye all.
See you all next week.